Hello, BookTube. Well, it hasn't been the best 48 hours with the wheezing and the sneezing and the sinus that's really a pip. But I thought I'd prop myself up on a chair and at least open some mail with you. And not really, I know you'll take this the right way, but not really for you, really for me. This is comforting for me. It's tremendously comforting to open my mail and chat about it with a bunch of friends, and I need a little comfort because I have those of you maybe are behind on crucial world events. I know it's not on the level of the drama of butt dialing, but I am sick again, and worse than before. So I have just been blubbering, but I figure. Friends who blubber together stick together. So we'll go through some mail and see what we can find. Maybe it'll be of interest to you, and maybe it'll perk me up. Just seeing your faces is perking me up. My only real question is going to be, can I open these packages? I don't feel like I can, but let's see. Oh, okay. This first one, yeah, you're going to hear the bean tearing at packages in the background because she's been very, very wonderful. She has wonderful company. She has wonderful company. But she's also young and full of pep. So, when I've been having the whole works here. Super sensitive echoes inside me, the slurping, the wheezing, the chills. And most of all, probably because my body is full of spent white blood cells, incredible lassitude. And that doesn't mix well with an energetic puppy who wants to go and do things. And she has been very understanding of that, but she's got some pent-up energy, so I'm going to feed her all of these packages. But anyway, this is a 2019 book. Those are going to be comparatively rare as we go on for the rest of the year. And this is something I've been looking forward to. I can't remember if we got it, an advance copy or not. But this comes out in late November. It's by Christian Richardson, and it's called The Season. It's a social history of the debutante. See that? Or the Jackie O gloves. It used to be a huge deal. It's right, and over time, the coming out of debutantes has fallen to has just been annexed to the super wealthy. It doesn't, as far as I know, it doesn't really happen in normal rungs of society. But maybe this book will teach me different. Yeah, once upon a time, daughters of wealthy elite families were the most valuable commodity. If the family was in financial trouble or their social status was in danger, a daughter's strategic marriage could solidify the crumbling crag on which the family stood. Sorry, I've got the nimbus of light there, so you can't see the book. So this is a story of that. This is a new book, explores the history and evolution of the debutante ritual, from the withdrawing rooms of Queen Elizabeth I to the marriage mart in London in the Regency era. And the author was born in London and lives with her son in Brooklyn. So this comes out in November. I assume, still be alive in November. I admit that feels like a dodgier assumption the last 2 days than usual, but I am behind in my reading. Not necessarily because I can't read, but although the first day of this I couldn't. But it's not necessarily that I can't read. It's instead for a far more human reason, something that all of you will recognize right away, which is that I could read and I needed comfort reading. So I went straight to John Carter of Mars instead of all the books that I have to read in October. There's still quite a few. October's almost over, and there's still quite a few October books I haven't read. Well, let's see. Let's move on. What is this next one? Oh, great. Okay. All right, this is a 2020 book. March of 2020. This is another Boris Akunin novel, best-selling Russian novel. This is She Loved of Death. She Lover of Death. Set in turn of the century Moscow, that'd be turn of the 20th century, because we have horse-drawn carriages there. Turn of the century Moscow, where inimitable series hero Erast Fandorin finds himself up against the dark forces at work within a secret suicide society. When Masha Mironova alights in Moscow at the turn of the century with a modest inheritance and a determination to shed her provincial Siberian upbringing. She transforms into Columbine, reckless and daring, with the dramatic outfits to prove it. In her quest for danger and passion, Columbine soon discovers the Lovers of Death, a small gathering of poets who conduct seances and determine Death's next chosen lover. Once named at a seance, the chosen member must await 3 signs from Death before taking his own life. The resulting string of suicides have taken Moscow by storm, becoming fodder for extensive media coverage and widespread hysteria. As the group's numbers steadily dwindle, as I imagine they would, a mysterious newcomer appears, immediately recognizable to the reader as an undercover Fandarin. The newest member begins to sow doubt and discord from within in order to ward Moscow's youth away from the lure of suicide and expose the sinister deceptions at the group's core. Interesting. So it sounds like we are not going to be privy to the plan to infiltrate this group, but instead we're going to see it from the outside in. That's always fun. Let's see here. I told myself before I started filming that if this becomes just a disaster, I don't need to upload it, and that is true. That is true. So if this nose slurping gets to be too much, I think it's just going to be rude to you, then I don't have to upload this. So let's see what this next thing is. Finished copy, probably. Oh, great. Okay, we saw the advanced copy of this. This comes out. Oh, isn't that clever? The publicity sheet says it comes out in the fall. Isn't that clever? No date, just the fall. Oh, okay. Well, I don't imagine that's going to endear the book's publicity material to most book section editors, but I am not most book section editors. This is by Maren Meinhardt, and it's a biography of Alexander von Humboldt, who has had a couple of big biographies in the last few years. I lived from 1769 to 1859 and was a well-known scientist and explorer of the Romantic Age. His work was admired by Thomas Jefferson, Ralph Waldo Emerson, God himself, as you can see, John Muir, and the great poet Goethe. Charles Darwin credits Humboldt as his inspiration to travel to distant lands. State parks across the world have been named after him, as well as numerous animals and plants. His work and writings foreshadow today's environmental concerns. And this is the latest biography of him to hit the stands. This is not a translation, but it did come out. Okay, that's what I thought. It came out in England under a different title. A Longing for Wide and Unknown Things was the title in England, but the publisher obviously thought that A Longing for Wide and Unknown Things, if that was its title in America, would suddenly be given a sexual reading, because that's what Americans do with everything. So they changed it to just Alexander von Humboldt. So that comes out in the fall. I wonder when in the fall. Is it out already? Is it out in late November? Is it out right up till the technical last day, the first day of winter, but not after that? How coy. Let's see, this next one is very heavy. Oh, great. Oh, wow. How elaborate. Okay. This is by Hilary Davidson. We saw this already, but I didn't know it was going to be this pretty. The finished copy. I didn't know the finished copy was going to be this pretty. This comes out in mid-November. This is Dressed in the Age of Jane Austen and the Blast of Sunlight. This is just, it's a big, heavy picture book about what people wore. This lively book reveals the clothing and fashion of the world depicted in Jane Austen's beloved books, focusing on the long regency between the years 1795 and 1825. Fantastic. Shall we take a peek and see what it looks like on the inside? I have no implements, I'm sure, to open this, and I have no strength on my own. Let's see how, oh wow, how lovely. Matte finish cover. It's full of black and white and color illustrations. Full of them. So you've got not only models of what they look like now after centuries. But also reproductions of paintings to show this stuff in situ. And I imagine people, yes, people as well. Of course, when I look at a painting like that, and there's no way to show this. With the Nimbus of Light, there's no way to show this. When I look at a painting like that in the London Portrait Gallery, of course, you know what I'm looking at, and it's not his breeches. But fantastic. All right, so that comes out in November. I have the advance copy. These things are always fun, though, and whether or not it will be, in addition to fun, whether or not it will actually be reviewable will entirely depend on whether or not Hilary Davidson writes to the level of the visuals. We shall see. Let's see what this next one is. Oh, great. Okay. Amazing how when you're sick, the simplest things confound you. I have lost complete spatial awareness. I've been knocking things over here in just a normal transit across the room, something I've done 8 million times before. I'm suddenly knocking things over. And here I've got normal packaging material, and I'm like, what? What's this? What kind of Gordian knot is this? This is another 2019 release. Mid-November. My November shelves. They're not going to look so domesticated. A few days of this sort of stuff. This is by Paul Richter, and it is called The Ambassadors, America's Diplomats on the Front Lines. There's no way to do it. The Nimbus of Light is following the book across the video. They have to do it like this, I guess. And as you can tell from the cover, this is about the dangers that U.S. diplomats face. The news, when it comes to U.S. diplomats now in 2019, the news is all about a U.S. diplomat named Gordon Sondland, who any normal person who watches the news would really kind of privately wish that he had encountered some dangers instead of just screwed up. Well, anyway. Okay, so Paul Richter is a veteran diplomatic correspondent, and he goes behind the battles and headlines to show how American ambassadors have been unconventional and unheralded warriors in the nation's recent conflicts in the Middle East. So this is going to be Christopher Stevens. This is going to be Benghazi, to a large extent anyway. We meet Ryan Crocker, a 6-time ambassador who twice ran the embattled U.S. Embassy in Afghanistan and served as ambassador to Iraq at the peak of the unsuccessful U.S.-Iraqi effort to calm a bloody civil war. Then there's Robert Ford, who was taken hostage by Shia militia during his long service in Iraq. Ann Peterson, who proved her negotiation skills in Colombian drug wars. And Christopher Stevens, a charismatic foreign service talent who stole into Libya under a rain of bombs to guide the American leaders through a civil war, but was ultimately killed in 2012. Okay, well, great, fantastic. So all these things have to go on the docket. They're not on the docket right now because I don't feel like reading anything except Tales of Barsoom. But I have to do it eventually. I've read a lot about Benghazi, but this puts it in a slightly broader context. I mean, the thing that saves it is that the author knows what he's talking about, so it won't just be sensationalism. Let's see what this next one is. This is from Tor. That's odd. I don't usually get science fiction and fantasy from Tor. I wish I did. This is a sequel. Is it a sequel? Yes, in the sequel to Mira Bolender's debut. The debut was City of Broken Magic, and this is the Monstrous Citadel. Amike, City of Sweepers, has survived the falling infestation which nearly destroys it, thanks to the efforts of Laura and O'Kane, as they say. I haven't read the first book, and it sounds like I very much need to. I'm not going to understand any of this. Maybe not, though. Maybe the author makes up for lost ground in a way that the pump sheet does not. While the ancient monsters have been beaten back for the moment, Laura and O'Kane must go to Rex, the City of Kings, to reclaim the secret weaponry that keeps Amike safe. There they come face to face with a horrifying truth about the wrecks and their designs on all Orion's cities. And I imagine that has to do with the subscription there. The worst monsters are human. So this, City of Broken Magic, was the first book. And then this is the Monstrous Citadel is the second book. So I should probably see if I can maybe get the first one. But I don't have to worry about it right away because this is... Oh. When does this come out? Sorry. Okay. This comes out in a week. This comes out in early November. Okay, so this is... I wonder if it's going to be a paperback. I wonder if this is the finished paperback. Yeah, oh, there, this is. It's going to be a paperback. Okay, so I still need to get the first one. Well, I'll give this one a try. I'll read the first few chapters, and if I have the feeling that I'm coming in late to the ball, I can always request the first one. Although, as I've said on this channel many times, I am a book reviewer, but I am also a reader, and as an author, you should make the second book in the series, the 10th or 20th book in the series, equally inviting to all. And if you are the author of such a series and you say, well, oh, come on, that's not possible, they'll just have to read the first book, then what you are doing is saying you're not talented enough to do it. It is possible. So really, maybe I shouldn't bother to order the first one, to request the first one, unless I really like this. I'm sorry that I'm missing out on more good writing. Maybe I'll just try this one and see if it brings me up to speed. Okay, then we have a couple of boxes, and then I will slurp off into the sunset. Isn't that terrible when you don't have the strength to rip apart a free book? Terrible. Fortunately, there are always scissors. So, what is this? Oh, what is this? Something big. I caught a glimpse of it. It's something big, and it's only one thing. It's not a box full of things. What is this? Oh, no. Oh, no. Okay, well, you can't say that we weren't warned. We were warned. This is the inimitable, thank God, Larry Kramer. And this is The American People, Volume 2, The Brutality of Fact. And it's huge. It's 2,700 pages long or whatever. It's historical fiction. It's fiction, allegedly. It's an enigma for our time. I honestly didn't think he would write another book in this series, much less it would be even longer than the first one. The first volume of The American People was a genuine stumper of a book. Just a genuine stumper of a book. And the pub sheet here for The American People Volume 2 doesn't even have a blurb. How could it? How could you have a blurb for a hysterically fictionalized history of America? So I guess we've got blurbs here. You've got The American People Volume 1, according to Dwight Garner in the New York Times, is a grand diva of a book, a wheezing jukebox of filthy jokes, political hit jobs, killing gossip, love songs, and fluky mutterings. It is Mr. Kramer's magnum opus. You could scarcely say otherwise, but then what do you do with this, which is even longer? And nobody thought he would write. That's what Dwight Garner says in the New York Times. And then then Sam Sachs in the Wall Street Journal says The American People is a work of fiction as excessive, outrageous, confrontational, and crazed as the author's activism. It gets under the skin, and its sharpest passages are impossible to forget. And then John Sutherland, writing in the New York Times, says, in the book review, the Times reviews books in the paper, but they also sometimes review the same book again in the book review. And John Sutherland is not a reviewer you want to turn down. You want him if he wants to write about it. He writes, Larry Kramer has done many good things. His remarkable life's achievement stands. Okay. Okay, well, you were probably wondering. The New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, what does the Washington Post have to say about this? The Washington Post says, The American People Volume 1 is an immense, sprawling, subversive, slightly insane, and brilliant. This is a writer all but synonymous with an epidemic. It is a novel in which all of America is raucously outed. A sequel covering the years of Kramer's own life is almost too terrible a thing to be imagined. I can't believe they used that line. That review is by yours truly. A sequel is almost too terrible a thing to be imagined, and they used it. I had so many people, including a couple of people on this pub sheet, just holding up that line in my review and saying that is quintessential Steve speak, where no one, especially the author, knows whether it's a compliment or an insult. Oh, wow. I wonder if those are going to be on the book. They're on the sheet. This is an FSG paperback, so it doesn't have, it just has the information on the back. It doesn't. This is not a mock-up of the finished book. I wonder if those will be on the book. It's always I have to admit, it's always an extra treat if you're a book reviewer, and if you're me anyway. Probably other book reviewers don't think this way, but for me, it's always an extra treat when you are blurbed by name on a paperback with friends of yours, and they are also blurbed by name, so that in the bookstores there's this paperback, and it's not just you with the honor of having your name printed on the book. So those copies go to used bookstores, they go all over the world, and your name is traveling with that book. It's not just that it's so much fun, such an honor for that to be true, but also that you are with people that you know. That is, how amazing would it be if there was a book in early 2020 that had me and Sam, for instance, on the same book when we are... Okay, well, we'll wait and see. I'll get the finished copy. I can't believe they used that line. Okay, well, then we do this last, and it is one of these things that's folded in, so maybe I don't have to risk the scissors. I don't like risking scissors when I myself am feeling a little wobbly. So, oh, fantastic. Oh, great. Fantastic. This comes out in mid-November, so it turned out to be a lot of 2019 books here. But I have already read this, and I thought it was incredibly good. It's by David Hall, and it's The Puritans, A Transatlantic History. Get that? Nimbus of Light. Great, big, thick, new history of the Puritans, from front to back. To think of Puritans is to conjure images of characters from Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Scarlet Letter or Arthur Miller's The Crucible. We are primed to think of the Puritans as a small, severe Protestant sect in colonial New England. In fact, it was a fully realized movement with a rich history stretching back to 16th century England, and a catalyst for profound cultural changes in the early modern Atlantic world, opening the door for other dissenter groups such as the Baptist and the Quakers, and leaving its enduring mark on what counted as true religion in America. That's a very good way to put it. What counted as true religion in America. And not only that, the Puritans also put a DNA stamp on the American mind frame, just in general. Even people who weren't Puritans and even atheists in the 21st century are still affected by the Puritan stamp that was put on the beginning of this country. The Puritan suspicion of the sensual, for instance. And a million other ways. Oh, God. Maybe this will get into it in great detail. Fantastic. This comes out in mid-November, and you're probably thinking, well, surely you're going to review it. And to that I say, the Puritans will certainly be reviewed at Open Letters Review, and it will certainly be reviewed where the review is written in a household that contains a miniature schnauzer, but I'm not sure it will be me who reviews it, even so. Oh, well, there you go. That finishes us, and that did make me feel better. I got to confess, obviously, that pub sheet for the American people, the Larry Kramer book, that would put a smile on my face if I were, on death's doorstep, which I have to point out. I'm a big whiny baby. I am not on death's doorstep. I'm just feeling really sick. That's all. And the reason I know that, I'm not gonna drag Deb into the video, but she and I both know what it's like to actually be on death's doorstep, and this is not that. But that makes it all the more fun to whine, right? Especially to a poor captive audience. So there we go. That was quite the mail haul. So we have the Puritans. Big new history of the Puritans. Then we have, I cannot believe I'm holding this in my hand. I cannot believe that he actually did it. This is The American People, Volume 2, The Brutality of Fact, by the always cheerful Larry Kramer. With blurbs from the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and the Washington Post. Then The Monstrous Citadel, a fantasy sequel, I will dive into it and see, since it's coming out, I will dive into it and see if I need the earlier book. Then The Ambassadors by Paul Richter. Pretty sobering stuff. When an ambassador loses their life. And Chris Stevens was more than just an ambassador. He was, I wonder if the book will draw the distinction. He was a dreamer. He lived on a bigger canvas than at least one of the other people that's mentioned that I know of. I'll learn a lot from the book. So, then Alexander von Humboldt, a new biography. She, Lover of Death, by Boris Akunin. Not to be confused with She Who Must Be Obeyed, although I don't know if that's going to if Yesha is going to turn up in this book. That would be fascinating. She is not in print anymore, am I right? Or does Penguin Classics do a paperback of She? Of course, when I mention 19th century boys' own adventure fantasy novels, all of a sudden the people I'm asking, hypothetically, shrinks to about four guys. But haven't I remembered seeing She as a rather pretty Penguin trade paperback? Well, anyway, and The Season, A History of Debutantes, and connected with that, Dress in the Age of Janos. How fascinating! So there you go. That is our sickbed mail haul for now. I have another stack of mail here, but I don't know if I'm up for... Oh, God help us. I don't know if I'm up... Look, this is just ridiculous. Okay, I'll just leave it here. I'm too tired. I don't know if I'm up to sit on this chair for any longer than this. I will see. Maybe I'll give it an hour. The Nimbus of Light might be gone by then, and I can try again. Thank you, BookTube.